I was recently asked by somebody why I like Star Wars so much. Well, for me, it's the lovable, unforgettable characters, the kind of heroes that you actually want to cheer and root for. Villains that are as epic as the music that plays behind them. The simple story of good versus evil. The Acolyte was a tough pill to swallow for me. It has none of that.
That's not how the Force works.
It is so far removed from what Star Wars used to be, and why I fell in love with it to begin with, that I'm questioning my own fandom. If I wasn't reviewing this show, I would have tapped out after episode 3. Some people might think I'm being a bit harsh on the show, and maybe I am. But here's the deal. When you're really invested in and very passionate about something, you do tend to put things under a microscope, so to speak. And through that lens, I watched a show that completely breaks canon Star Wars lore, is filled with dreadful characters, mediocre set designs, and a nonsensical plot. Now, I'm going to start with the story and the lore because that is my biggest issue with this show. The Acolyte takes place roughly 100 years before episode 1, even less I think if you include the time jumps. So we know that older Jedi like Yoda and Ki-Adi-Mundi for some reason would be present here, and the show does confirm that. So it's stated in episode 1 that the Sith, the enemy of the Jedi, have been extinct for like 1,000 years. Jesus, who said that? Oh right, it was Ki-Adi-Mundi himself. Yet, here they are, and killing Jedi all over the place. So as the show kind of goes on, I was thinking to myself that they're gonna have to like kill everybody by the end of this so that it doesn't break the lore of the movies. That ended up not being the case, and really, I don't know, maybe that would have raised even more questions. Now, we all know Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, and it would appear that his miraculous conception by the Force, well, isn't really that miraculous at all, because it's pulled off in this show, and with twin girls no less. I would think that the Jedi would remember something that significant. I cannot buy for 1 second that Yoda would have been ignorant to all the things that transpired on this show. But the Acolyte doesn't sweat the details. No, sir.
I have never seen Star Wars.
So the progression and the flow of the story I felt could have been more fluid. We get a few episodes that are set in the past, and they're meant to be a background to show us why one of these twins is hunting down the Jedi. So the first time we see these events unfold, it's essentially like a here's what happened 16 years ago. And then as the show moves on and these other suspicions come up and other revelations, we go back again and relive the same time through a different point of view for the show to be like, here's what really happened. You can tell that the writers really tried to deliver a moment for us where we'd be like,
Oh, shit.
but when it actually played out, it was more like, okay. This show wanted to bring the Jedi down a bit, drag them through the mud, and kind of paint them as the antagonist in an at least indirect sort of way. Now, I don't need or even want the Jedi to be these morally complex characters that I can sympathize with and relate to. I'd make the argument that even being morally complex doesn't even sound like a Jedi at all. There is very little in this show that jives with what has come before it. And so much is contradictory to what we already know. Visually, I won't say that the show looks bad in general, but for a Star Wars show, and one with a budget of $180 million, it left a lot to be desired and has me wondering where that money went exactly. The jungle that they spent a few episodes in looked particularly unconvincing, let's say. The little clips of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant that they repeatedly used, those just flat looked bad. And I thought the inside of the temple felt really small and cramped, at least to what we've been shown in the movies. One thing I did think looked really cool though was at the end of the series when Osha bled the crystal in Soul's lightsaber. We got to see the blade slowly just turn from blue to red. It looked pretty sweet. And honestly, I thought that was the best moment of the entire show. And for the big nerds, we got a single shot of Darth Plagueis creeping on the Sith from a cave, which ended up being just complete fan service. It didn't serve a purpose other than to say, hey, check out this little guy.
Oh, that little guy. I wouldn't worry about that little guy.
Now, when it comes to the action and the combat in this show, I'm probably in the minority. I wasn't a fan of the more martial arts focused combat that they used throughout the show. It just felt out of place to me. I didn't think it was executed particularly well either. I thought that it stood out the most when May and Osha finally get to throw down in the last episode. That fight was the climax of the entire show, and it just sucked. On the other hand, some of the lightsaber combat did fare much better. The scene where the Sith Khmer takes on a whole squad of Jedi was really impressive. I want to call out though, I did not like how he went in there and easily and quickly defeated multiple Jedi Knights at the same time, only to turn around and struggle very hard against the young Padawan girl one-on-one. Like, what? But that being said, the way he ends up taking her out, poking the holes through her, that was a pretty badass little finishing move. Before I bring this review to a close, I do want to talk about one scene specifically. In one of the flashback sequences, we get to see the witches performing this ritual that they call the Ascension. And during this ritual, they sing this little tune about the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. Now, they don't just sing this either. It is recorded and dubbed over. It's got instruments and everything. Even if you haven't seen the show, you've probably heard of this little bit. Because this scene might be the single worst thing I have seen in all of Star Wars. I was literally wincing as this thing was playing out. It was amazing for all the wrong reasons. Star Wars has been on the decline for many years now, but this show has just broken any remnants of hope that I had left for this franchise. The Acolyte is canonically flawed and objectively bad. In my opinion, it is the worst live-action Star Wars show or movie. At this point, what I would like to see Disney sell Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy has to go. I would rather have no Star Wars than more of this fucking dumpster fire.